Well, thank you so much for joining us on this session. We are talking about nursing in India, and we know that there is a perennial shortage of nurses in India. WHO says we need 1.37 million more nurses. So we have a challenge, which is the shortage of nurses, and there are another challenges emerging when we talk about nursing. One of those is technology. As the splurge in healthcare operations, in hospitals, technology is taking the center stage, but the appliers of those technologies, the end users, are nurses who are doctors, are mostly the verifiers who see the reports, but it's the nurses who do these tests, who are taking on these technologies. One of those is remote patient monitoring, and there are many which are coming in the space. But we want to understand how adaptive nurses are these days when the technology is taking center stage in hospitals. Are they taking it as a challenge or an opportunity? Let me ask Mr. Subramaniam, let me start with you. Do you think nurses in India at this point in time are adaptive to the technologies which are splurging? And if not, what are the challenges?
Yeah, so generally people say that adaptive nursing community adaptive, but we don't agree with that because we work with a lot of hospitals in India, pan-India, and nurses are adaptive. They really are looking forward because that will ease their work. They look this as a tool. But sheer workload and the stress levels within the hospital, and most of them the training or the session happens in the hospital during the in between time, meaning when they go off the shift or when they come for the shift, which is not a good time to. So we all normally ask the hospital to provide a time where they are not off duty and they can come and concentrate. And if we do that, we have seen fairly good success when we train the nurses. They are adaptive. Otherwise, in the hospital, the stress levels are very high and the anxiety levels are very high. But they are very adaptive. That's what I've seen in the hospital floors so far.
Ms. Jaykumar, tell us about this workload pressure and the technology which is coming in. What is the challenge there?
Thank you, VW, for giving us this opportunity. I think this is a platform where we are able to share our thoughts, and this would add a lot of value into what you are taking forward also. In terms of workload and the pressure, I think it is all in terms of planning. Safe staffing saves life. So if we are staffed appropriate and we are able to delegate our task and assign priorities, we are able to take that task smoothly. So a lot of things goes in terms of staffing. If we are looking into cutting costs by coming down by the number of nurses, then the pressure still persists. So I think if technology has to be really looked into how best we would be enabling staffing, we did try out something called as an e-rota, where we have a staffing mechanism where we inbuilt a competency level of our nurses, available nurses, and making it easy for our senior nurses to deploy nurses for that shift, so that we have the right skilled nurses at that shift who is able to multitask, balance, and that pressure would not be visible. So if that is incorporated, if technology is incorporated into staffing, and this will enable relieving pressure for our nurses at the bedside, and also enabling the nursing admin to do the rota more diligently, where there is a mix of skill and it is appropriately divided.
Ms. Latha, what do you reckon now about this challenge?
So, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. So, first, I would like to tell that, see, one is, as Saroja have told about the staffing. Second is, see, we have specialty courses. So, even if we look into the specialty courses, the adaptability will be easily taken by the nurses. Otherwise, what will happen? They will think that it is a pressure on them. Okay, one is more than the staffing. Second is how we have to understand their well-being also. And there are degree courses. See, a GNM will be taken into the jobs of the degree. And the degree person will be taking the jobs of an MSc. So it gives a lot of pressure in their back mind. That is what is actually happening. So I feel that if they have to take the technology in the right manner, we have to begin in a right manner with a safe staffing and safe rota managing. Thank you.
Right. Kalyan Suma, what are some of the technologies that that are coming into the hospitals that nurses are having to deploy, or they, because it's the need right now. It's not if it has to happen. So what are those technologies which are splurging?
So if you actually start with the first and the foremost technology that we've had in the intensive care was the monitors. So that made life very easier for the nurses there, because they don't have to, otherwise you have to deploy a nurse only to be standing next to the patient and monitoring the patient, especially in the intensive care units every 15 minutes. So this continuous monitoring was one way back which we had. It was a boon to the critical care nurses. And secondly, if you also see earlier nurses, like when we did way back nursing, we had to calculate the drip rate, and then you have to adjust the drip rate and see to that by this many hours this has to go. And then we need to monitor that. That was happening. And then we also had like infusion pumps, syringe pumps, which again made the life very, very easier for nurses. So going forward, we didn't have anything that, keeping the staff patient ratio, the nurse patient ratio in mind. We said, okay, fairly nurse can look after 1:5 patients or 1:6 patients in certain areas. So especially patients who have been shifted to, from the ICUs, intensive care units, to the wards, or patients who are kept in the wards but needs close monitoring. So those were the patients wherein it was difficult for the nurse to keep monitoring. And so there have been devices which has come now, a couple of things like, a dozy or a LifeSigns. So which is helping them to do monitoring continuously. And the staff can be in the nurse stations, and then they can monitor. Once in a while they can go and check on the patients also. That has definitely made life little more easier. So these are some of the technologies that we are started using it, which is definitely, it is coming in favor of the nurses. And the nurses are also able to, give more attention, to the other tasks also, apart from only monitoring the patients.
Okay. Dr. Paul, what are some of these technologies that you are using at Aster?
Yeah, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Definitely with the number of manpower reduction and also the new nurses who come to us from nursing colleges, the kind of training they undergo, it's a big challenge for us now. So technology is the only thing which help us. Like for example, now we are starting a tele-ICU, where there's one experienced qualified nurse could take care of 4 ICU patients on ventilator, because the monitoring is going to be done by another qualified doctor or an experienced nurse, and with some help like critical care assistants, we are able to manage. And moreover, entire documentation is coming online now. So we don't need to go with every paper. Like for example, if I check blood pressure once, and I write the same blood pressure in 4 places, my time is saved by just entering once, and it is going into all the different areas. Like for example, if the patient is critically ill, we call it a muse and puce. That's a monitoring skill. It's pop up, and then I'm able to identify. There's all the technologies, and we can keep talking about it so much. And it's definitely making our nurses' life easy. And also, it's an individual documentation. When it comes to this kind of new technology, we can find a lot of perfection. That is also, and there's so many other things also.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Subramaniam, on what Dr. Paul said here, that one nurse can, probably look at 4 tele-ICU monitors. Here comes the challenge which nurses think with multiple parameter patient monitoring, that, it will come as a threat to their jobs. Do you think that question is right, or will it ease their work?
So the question is not right, but the question is there. So most of the nurses, when we go to the hospital, that's the first thing is they feel that we have come to replace them. But definitely we cannot replace nurses. First training itself, when we start, we say that we have come to help. You treat us as your friend, meaning our solution or device. You treat them as your friends. It's basically a tool which can make your life much easier, like what all they say. One, as she was pointing out, you don't have to write data. Not even once you have to write. Automatically it captures, it sends the data. That is one big. And when they start using it, and they experience the convenience and the efficiency, and they're able to manage much better. So then the adoption is easier. Initially there is some resistance, but it's everywhere, right? When we first started using GPay, even simple GPay, we had that resistance, so it will be there. But we start our training with educating them that it's not going to be a threat, it's more of a tool to use. Pandemic has helped us in that way. So, for example, in one of our government hospitals, we have managed there were only limited nurses, about 12 nurses managed 280 patients at one point of time because there are no available nurses. But with technology, with our solution, 12 nurses managed about 285 beds in one point of time. So these kind of experiences, when it comes out, so they will understand it's more to help you, not to replace you.
Absolutely, the shortage is as such that there will be no job reductions. Ms. Jaykumar, tell us about the training programs that are needed and how frequent they should be when it comes to new technologies coming in the space.
Let us all agree that there's a wide gap between what nurses get trained in the schools and colleges of nursing and what we are expecting them to be providing at the bedside. There's a wide gap. If we have to fill that gap, then the training is necessary, in the ongoing training. Then when do we provide it? As Sir was already trying to say that, they are already with that kind of hours of shift that they have to be, it would be a 6 and 12-hour shift. So when do we incorporate training for them? So there is something called there is a departmental training which is job specific. There is a common training that we call it as a continuing nursing education. Then there is a specialty training that we would want them to upskill themselves. Now, how often we would have to do it? The opportunity of training is there always. So what we have worked around is, we know that our nurses coming from the schools and colleges of nursing do not know the protocols that is necessary at the bedside. So we have started off what is called as the mentor or the preceptorship program. A mentor or a preceptor is there working along with the preceptee at the bedside, able to identify what are the skill deficit of a preceptee and trying to mentor and help that person to upskill at the bedside. And there is a briefing and a debriefing that is happening at the job. And then there is also something called as a departmental training that gets summarized. And this is within the job. Now, getting our nurses to be participating in a training other than the kind of work shifts that they are having is always strenuous. It is strenuous, even we would not. Now, how do we inculcate a self-learning among our nurses? Self-learning is something that we have. The adult learning skills have started off coming into our work culture, where we have brought in a lot of video modules. Young generation is almost taking in a lot of learning, of self-learning through the modules available. It is in their devices. They have an ID and a password. We have got a calendar in which they would have to complete those modules within the set time. There is a pre-test, there is a post-test. So after gaining an essential knowledge, then we take them into a skill lab in a specific calendar time that they are able to demonstrate in the skill lab. So we don't want to risk the learning at the bedside. We would want the safe learning to be happening in the skill lab. We have set up simulation centers where we would be able to build up those skills. The gap that is available in the education is actually bridged in the skill lab, that most of us as hospitals have identified the need of the hour. And then post that assessment, we are able to assign them independent patients. Even when they are with their independent patients, we identify whether they are able to inculcate or incorporate that learning at the bedside. So with this, we are able to enable the training. We understand the fact that nurses, they get trained, they be there, and then they leave. We have started living with that kind of a trend. In no way we are able to retain. I think retention would be, the attrition is always a problem that is there. So training and training and training has only been our way of helping our nurses to build up the skills and to safeguard our patient care.
Ms. Latha, what do you reckon? What kind of nursing courses are you undertaking in your hospital at this point in time?
So I think that, see, most of the corporate hospitals, if you look at it, see, we have a pipeline how we have to face the attrition. See, more than the attrition, we think about how we can retain the staff. So retention strategies are on. So one is into the specialty training, what we are started with, like a small courses like dialysis course or critical care courses, or even if it is, because today expectations are very high, it may be like a ECG course or into the ABG. What is the requirement? Second one is, see, we have to select the people and motivate them. See, what we are facing is the nurses are not usually get so easily motivated because of the work pressure, what sir was telling, and it has to be done on the during on duty. So what we have taken is we give an off for them to get into that. So it will give them a peace of mind to attend all the courses without any tension. That is what we are doing today.
Right.
Thank you.
Colonel Suma, you know, a lot of migration is also happening at this point in time. Nurses are going abroad because they are getting paid better. And tell us about this. How serious is this at this point in time? We already have a shortage, and we seeing a lot of nurses moving abroad. How do we need to change that?
See, demand for nurses is global. If you actually see in the US also, it's been projected that they are short of about 3 million nurses. So definitely, wherever there is a better offer, people would definitely migrate to that area. Does not only happen with nursing, it happens across all professions. So, so for that reason, recently even our Honorable Prime Minister had introduced to so many more nursing colleges, about 116 more nursing colleges are upcoming to tackle the shortages. So definitely migration is something that you and me cannot do anything about, because for better prospectus. So what we can look at as a corporate hospital is that how to retain the nurses is something that we have to make them understand that nurses are also a very indispensable part of the healthcare team. And it is not that nurses are paid poorly in India. It again depends upon how you have specialized yourself. Like even if you take it in the medical profession also, we have hospitalists or duty doctors who are just MBBS, and we also have doctors who have done specialities. And so the pay scale is also depends upon how you have upskilled yourself and where you stand in the current scenario. If the nurses are willing to contribute and they want to work upon and then become specialized nurses, they are in high demand even in India, and they are paid very well. So that is what we'll have to tell them, and also then plus these technologies will also help nurses, assist nurses, like we can have robotics. Slowly that robots also will come into play, which will assist nurses in a much more better area where we can tackle the retention also. And we also need to look at how we can, find courses which can be short term, and at the same time we can be able to help nurses to do better. That is how we can, tackle the present scenario, present problem that we have.
Dr. Rohini Paul, do you think pay is not the challenge here, or it's among one of the biggest challenges? What is?
I know. See, now Karnataka has raised, as per their minimum wages have increased 2023. It's quite a big hike, but still, when you compare the remuneration with other countries, we can no way match. That everybody knows. But for nurses, the opportunity to go abroad to other country, it's huge, because the need abroad is also very high. That is one thing. It's not today. 30 years back, nurses were the majority of nurses had an opportunity to go to Gulf. Now, I don't think all the profession, they had this similar opportunity. Now it's increased to many other countries. Like after COVID, UK, one more thing is 2 years we had an opportunity to retain the nurses because the other countries expected 2 years minimum experience to enter their country. Now after COVID, they don't need our experience. They just say you complete that English test and OET, it's along with that portion of it. It's an occupational English, it is actually, it's all job related. So if you complete that, you can enter our country and they have been given job. So that way, the nurses are not even staying for 3 months with us. Because as soon as they complete nursing, they go to any agent, get through this and get the score. By 6th month, they are able to leave the country and go. So this is not going to stop. It's going to increase soon. USA also is going to open. So that way, it is better. That's what I'm telling. This technology alone can help us to run our healthcare industry in India. So whatever the nurses we have, we should find many ways and means of upgrading, educating them, like as many of us, many of them have shared. Even we have dedicated 1 full day in a week, 8 hours only training, So this is what the skill, what we can do by hand is being developed. Because if I go in front of a patient and start wearing a blouse, simple wearing a blouse, we might think it's just wearing a blouse. If 2 fingers will go to one direction, my patient will think she's a useless nurse. That is the skill is expected by the community. So that is what the simulation lab and all this technology, new technology, we really thank most of the agents who are come out with so many technologies, and we are willing to adapt, and nurses also they are willing to adapt, because whatever the corporate hospital they learn, it's definitely it's going to useful for them in abroad, whichever the country they are entering. So with that, I know we are not going to come out of this attrition, but we will find a way to tackle the situation so that we can run the
Yes,
industry.
hopefully with technology.
Yes.
Mr. Subramaniam, let me address my last question to you, which is how can we build inclusive healthcare operations where nurses are, their status is improving continuously going forward?
Status is not a problem because they all know you need the nurses in the hospitals, and the hospitals and the doctor community know that they are the lifeline and the bloodline of the hospital. So status is good. The only thing is, I would like to add a few points. Like when we went for training or training our solution, I've noticed it's not all nurses are same. There are senior nurses who actually listen, okay, and concentrate. And freshers from college, they don't listen much. The retention time is very low. Then we started talking to them after the training. As all panelists are saying, their goal is to something, like say they work for about 6 months and they want to move out. So they always been thinking about it and they're not in the job. So we are now started telling hospitals, why don't you have a separate, where, I don't know what you can call them, tech nurses or some new other, where they will only use technology and go and help the nurses, giving the alerts, push alerts, giving the data. So the skilled nurses can handle the treatment plan or whatever to be done at the bedside. And you don't need to use nurses for monitoring. Instead, you can use them for more skillful job in the ward. And some lower level skilled or who've been trained only to do this can look at the screen, use the technology and give the data to them, because they need the data to do whatever they have to do. So something like that can be done, and the course can be designed around that, might help this. And they will also be, I think, that will be the easiest, because anyway you can't stop migration. The attrition is going to be high in the coming years because the requirement is very huge. So you can split where there will be a central monitoring or a command center where they look at use the tools, technology tools, look at all the data, and anything to be highlighted or alerted, they will do, and the skilled nurses can go and handle that. That's my, I don't know, I feel.
adding more specialized jobs going forward in nursing. Thank you so much for joining us on this session. With due to the paucity of time, we won't be able to take questions. I'd like to thank my panelists for being so vocal in their responses. Thanks. Thank you so much.